Today, we have Patrick Crozat on the podcast. He is from G&C Auto Body, and they have 32 collision centers. Can you imagine? I remember running one collision center and... Well, stay tuned because we're going to go behind the scenes with Patrick and hear what their little recipe for magic is.
Welcome to Body Bangin', your podcast for all things body. Auto body, that is. And now, introducing Body Bangin's host, Mickey Woods of Mickey Woods Marketing. Mickey is a former auto collision center owner and is now a marketing and business development expert to shops across the globe.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Body Bangin' podcast. If you are watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe so you get alerted when a new episode goes live. If you're listening on any of the podcast platforms, make sure that you're following. That way it alerts you and you don't have to remember like, oh, haven't heard Body Bangin' in a while. It'll pop up on your phone when a new one goes live. So welcome back for most of my followers here. And if you're new, welcome. Today we have, this is actually going to be a cool conversation, you guys. Today we've got Patrick Crozat. Is that how you pronounce the last name?
That's Crozat. Close enough.
Crozat. What nationality is this?
French.
French. Oh, Did we have this conversation before? Patrick Crozat.
I don't recall.
My maiden last name's Parlier. And it does not look like it says Parlier. Looks like Parlier. So you'd only know it was Parlier if you were French. So I get it. So nobody spells it right. It's basically what it is. Nobody says it right, right?
No.
Yeah. So Patrick is the COO of G&C Auto Body. I don't know if you guys know about G&C. If you're on LinkedIn, you probably have seen some of Patrick's posts. G&C Auto Body is massive. These guys are opening shops like nobody's business. So at the moment, they have 32 locations up and functioning. Started with one. Patrick's dad founded this back in 1972. Now they're up to 32. And it's the largest family-owned, privately owned auto body corporation, I guess. You're incorporated. You're a corporation.
That'll work. Yeah.
So not to be confused with the consolidators, right, Patrick? No, what do you like to be called? No. Can I call you Pat? Or do you like Patrick?
Yeah. Pat, Patricia. I don't care. I'm easy.
I'm just rolling with things. All right. So tell me, what really differentiates you from the other large, because I would consider, you're an MSO, you got a lot of shops going on. What do you feel like is the differentiator for you? And just so you guys know that are listening, where is she going to go with all this? Well, we're going to talk about scaling because a lot of you guys have one shop or two shops, some 5 or 6, and really want to get more into how do I scale this thing? So we're going to talk about that. Patrick is really involved in the recruiting of employees, and that's a huge hot topic right now. So it's the fact that they're opening up facilities so quickly, how are they getting employees to fill these facilities? So those are a couple of things we're going to talk about. But first and foremost, what differentiates you guys, do you feel like, Patrick, in your 32 shops versus other MSOs or even consolidators out there?
Yeah. So, in the consolidation world, the consolidators, it was always the big 4. You had, Gerber, Abra, Service King, Caliber, and then some privately owned, family owned shops. And it's really sad to see a lot of those going away.
Yeah.
That's all I knew my whole career at over 20 years doing this was there was Cook's Collision out here, and they were the largest privately owned, family owned body shop and someone that we really looked up to, and they ended up selling a couple years ago. And then there was also Mike's Auto Body, who had 18 locations out here, and they just recently sold to Crash Champions.
Yes.
And there's a lot of consolidation going on nationwide everywhere. I know that probably scares a lot of people seeing our industry change so much. And it's just different. And everyone's afraid of what the future brings. But there's always a place for us privately owned, family owned body shops, whether you have 1, 2, 10, or 32.
Right.
And insurance companies, they need that. They need options for their customers. And we all know, as a privately owned, family owned body shop, that there's a level of pride that comes with that. That personal touch, that personal experience that the owner is going to be able to give to their customers, because that's their name or their legacy. Their father maybe started that business, or it's their baby that they created.
Yeah. A different connection, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not just a business. It's not just a transaction. These consolidators, we all know what venture capitalists are doing. They just want to invest in a company. They want to blow it up really fast, and then they want to turn around and flip it. And that's where they make their money on it.
Right.
And it is, in my opinion, damaging the industry.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. So you guys, and I don't know how much we really want to get into it, but this is really a family run. I don't even know what we call it, group of shops, because, your wife is involved, your brothers are involved, your dad's, so you guys got all the different levels. You really truly are a family run business. It's not just family owned. You run it on the day-to-day operations of things, really, and at different levels. So knowing that there are a lot of people out there similar to you, what did that look like for you guys when you started going from one location to two locations, from 2 to 3? Was it like you got to 5 locations and it's like, okay, we got it figured out now, and then you were able to, you know what I mean? If we were watching it on a graph of like you buying shops, would it be like slow and then burn because then you got it figured out? Or what did that look like for you?
So when we first went from 1 shop to 2 shops, and then to 3 shops, I was still in high school. I was still a kid.
Oh, wow.
I think maybe junior high. And so my dad, he was a high school dropout, went to the Air Force, had 2 kids by 19, and the Air Force gave him a paint gun and had him painting vehicles in the Air Force.
Wow.
So he knew how to paint that military green really easily. And then when he got out of the Air Force, he went to work for a dealership, body shop. And then he opened up his own body shop here in Santa Rosa 51 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So we sat at that for 30 something years. My dad achieved his goals and dreams and ambitions. He went from, he always liked to say he had $20 in his back pocket and a pack of Pall Malls when he came to Santa Rosa, and he achieved his dream and built his business.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Then he had a bunch of kids. And my oldest brother, Sean, who's our CEO, he was like, well, Dad, I want to do something. I want to create something too. He built this shop. And my dad was like, okay, I'll pay for it. You kids do it.
Yeah.
And so my brother, Sean, opened our San Rafael store and our Petaluma store. And it wasn't too big of a stretch there because there was like a sibling running every store. It was still family run. There was an owner in a way at every single location.
Right.
But I remember going back and talking with my dad and hearing the conversations and how nervous he was about going from 1 location to 2 locations because not knowing what's going on at that other location at all times.
Right.
And both stores our first store was here in Santa Rosa, California, and the other one was in San Rafael, California. So it's about, with traffic and everything, an hour away.
Okay.
Like in the next city over.
Right.
So we sat at those 3 locations for a really long time. And then we started growing some more, and we started adding on just a shop or 2 a year at that pace.
Just a shop or 2 a year.
Well, we built up a lot of people, and that's the key to growing your business. Is your people are your best asset.
For sure.
And I've always told my staff that this is your shop. I may be the one that owns it, but this is your shop. You're the ones that make this place have a culture. You're the one that makes this place live and breathe.
Right.
And so we've always focused on people and growing people and grooming up people to be able to grow.
Right.
So you've got to have the right people that are like-minded, that wow you and impress you every day, and that you trust to help you grow your business and add another location. I wouldn't just wake up one day and say, "Oh, I want to open a location, and maybe I'll find the right person, and hopefully it works out."
Well, that's really the issue right now, is like a lot of single shop owners, they can barely staff 1 shop. and they're constantly looking for good quality people. Well, not necessarily constantly, because the good shops, they don't have high turnaround, but there's always a need, especially when you're growing. You need more quality people, and they're very difficult to find, especially right now, more so than before. So I find it fascinating where you're talking about growing to even 3 locations from 1, and then 1 to 2 a year, and finding those quality people. And I'll go back and ask you some questions about like the scaling part of it. But since we're on this, do you mind going more in depth into what that looks like for you guys? Where are you looking? How are you going about that?
Yeah. So we've always felt that and seen that there was a shortage of people in this industry, skilled people. And we've always taken the approach that as a business owner, it's part of our duty as a business owner to bring people into our industry. And I see articles about how there's always been a shortage of staff, a shortage of technicians. During COVID, that was all over the news all the time. There's just a shortage of people working. There's more jobs than there are people to hire
fill
that
them.
are looking. Yeah. And so we've always focused on bringing people into the trade that don't know anything about it, and building a training curriculum to teach them this trade. And so there's always an apprentice with somebody. A journeyman has an apprentice technician. The painter has a prepper polisher that works for him. And we're working on bringing up those people's skills to get them to be able to go on their own within 3 to 5 years. And we just always been doing that, because the one thing you can't get back is time.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I've heard some shops is in this idea of bringing people from the outside versus trying to find somebody else that's already trained, like versus finding a, whatever level tech or even a CSR, trying to find somebody that already has, or an estimator, whatever, a repair planner. It seems to be a big shift now, not a big shift, but it's starting to shift where people are realizing the power and the value of finding those people without the skills and training them internally. And then they don't have all the bad habits potentially that they picked up along the way. They know your process only, the way that you like things done. So I really think this is a big key to it. So the tricky part is that I know shops are thinking like, that's all well and good. Where do I even begin with that? I would think.
Exactly. So we do. So I have, for our size, I do have 2 full-time recruiters that are doing all the job placement ads and interviews. But yeah, you need to, if you ever want to catch a fish, you got to go fishing. Right. And sometimes you got to change the bait, and sometimes you got to go to a different pond, right, to catch a fish. Right. But you're never going to catch a fish if you're never fishing. So don't get discouraged if you're putting ads out there and you're not getting applicants right away, and you're not getting that instant gratification. You've always got to be looking for people, not doing those fear hirings when you need someone now because you have a vacant spot, and this person has a pulse, so you got a job, and then maybe 3-6 months later down the road, you're like, oh, I hired the wrong person, and you just lost that much time. Yeah. So you want to be always hiring, so you can be slow to hire, and you'll meet those people that just wow you sometimes. Right. And as a business owner, you need to be actively hiring just yourself. When the people that you want already have jobs. Those aren't the ones looking for jobs. The people that are unemployed looking for jobs usually aren't the best candidates. Right. Not usually. You get lucky sometimes. Yeah. But you want to get those passive people, those people that are maybe passively looking but not really looking, or the people that aren't looking at all. When you go out to a restaurant, when you go out and you're a customer and you see someone that just wows you, give me your business card. Hey, why don't you swing by my shop if you're looking for a career? I'd love to talk to you about what I can do for you. Yeah. And we've gotten plenty of people like that over the years. Yeah. Case in point, Jesse Parks, you interviewed a little while ago. Of course. I love Jesse. Jesse was our waiter when I was a kid, and he hit up my dad wanting a job at a restaurant. My dad gave him that opportunity. Wow. Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah.
And now Jesse's like all about it.
Yeah, you never know where you're going to find amazing people.
Right. And waiters are actually great people because they've got those people skills. I always say, like, you can train somebody anything, but you can't train personality.
Correct.
You can't train charisma, like you got it or you don't got it kind of thing. Yeah, that's really cool. And I actually did that when I owned my shop, is I always had cards on me. And like, I remember there was a girl that served frozen yogurt and she was the sweetest girl. And I'm like, hey, give her my card. Who knows? And we ended up hiring her. She was amazing. So you just don't know. And I think that's true, is you can't rely on one way of doing things. And, I have a lot of shops that do like Indeed posts or job posts through LinkedIn or, social media groups and everything. And those can be great. You can find people. But like you said, most people that are out there looking, I think that's part of why those are such a struggle, because those are the people that are typically hopping and really haven't found a place. And we don't know exactly what the issue is, but I think that that's something for everybody to pause for a second and think about. How can we go about attracting talent for people that are already working somewhere and not necessarily in another shop? We don't have to go poach somebody from another shop to get a quality person, and be actively looking in your everyday life when somebody's special, giving them your card. So that kind of leads me to another question. So if we've got another shop that we're going to open up, are you training people up knowing that you're going to have spots to fill?
Correct.
Okay.
So we're trying to plan ahead of time. We're always trying to have staffing a year ahead of time where we're going to need them to grow, because we have a pipeline of people in the company that we feel could manage a location at some point. We interview them ahead of time for a management position.
Right.
And if that person does want it, then we have a path to kind of mentor that person to get them ready to run a shop in a year.
Okay.
So you got to see the ability in people, or where they could potentially be, and then help cultivate them to get there. Because like you were saying, the poaching game of trying to get this person, that's what our industry has been doing for so long.
Yeah.
And now we're at an issue where like a majority of journeyman technicians are in their late 50s.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen in 5 or 10 years? An alarm needs to be going off to everyone right now. We all need to realize that we need to all just start grooming up our own people and all do our part to bring people in this industry, so that doesn't have to happen. But it takes time.
True. It does take time. And I think some of it has to come down to process of not only for potential employees, but process in every level. If you're talking about, 32 locations, your processes have to be dialed in so that the service that they get, if they're at your Santa Rosa location or BFE location, like, it doesn't matter. We all do the same things. Is that the way that you have it?
Yeah, we have SOPs
Standardized
for every step that needs to kind of happen. And, and we're always working on how can we make the company better. I'm not going to say that we're the best thing since sliced bread. We have issues in every store. We have staffing issues.
Yeah.
Not every store is exactly the same. But if you're always hiring just the right people who are smart, for me, I always tell people you got to be humble, hungry, and smart. If you got those three things, I can work with you and I can help get you there to a career for you.
Right.
And so we have people in training as estimators. We have people training as technicians, and we have systems for getting those people to where we need them to be within a certain period of time. We have a full mock-up classroom where we have a full-time trainer that just trains and mentors estimators.
Wow.
And then we invest a lot in just bringing in all of our vendors to train people a lot. I host a lot of weekend classes to groom up the skills for, work on the car liner or GYS welding equipment. You got to spend the time and money to invest in people. And I think that's always a fear of some business owners that, if I spend all this money getting this person certified and getting them trained, then maybe they'll get so good they'll leave me.
Right.
And my question I would say is, well, isn't it worse that you don't train them, they don't ever get good at the job, and they still work for you?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. I like that. I like that a lot. Well, one thing that I did notice, and you posted, I don't remember when exactly it was on LinkedIn, and it talked about, and maybe it wasn't you that posted it, but somebody in your organization had shared basically what other people that work for you, how they rated your culture. And I think that's something to really pay attention to. It's like we're not putting bodies in a seat for the sake of filling seats. It's really like the buy-in and appreciating the culture of what you have going on, especially when people have options of where to go. I feel like they're much more inclined to be interested to even apply to your place of business than somewhere else. If you've got, does that make sense?
100%. So I'm a firm believer you've got to guard your culture with your life. Your business, it's your business, and you have a culture that you want to cultivate, and you need to ensure that when someone comes into your location that they fit into, that they're buying into the culture you want. And that should all start from the ad you put out to hire people. So going back to, take a look at other shops ads that they're running. What are some things you like? Really think about what do you want in an employee and how you can phrase that to appeal, to excite someone. Because you got to remember that there's a good applicant there, and they're not just looking to work at a body shop. If you got someone that's a technical mindset person, they might want to go be a plumber. They may want to be an electrician. So how do you compete with the world market to get people to, when they're scrolling through a whole bunch of resumes on Indeed, and they're just, ads, and they're just, just firing off their resume to 100 different people, what makes them stop and go, ooh, that's exciting.
Right.
Ooh, this is a little different than everyone else's. And yeah, that is me. You want them looking at it and saying, yes, that's what I want. Yes, that's me. Asking them questions in your ad so that they get to start thinking about, yeah, I do want that. Yeah, I do want that. Yeah, and that's where I get people say, I'm excited about that. I want to come work for you. And that's when I ask people when we're interviewing, hey, what made you apply to me?
Right.
And I want to know, I want them to be that I'm passionate about what you have to offer. Yes. And that means that person is like-minded like you and is going to fit into your culture better.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I'm going to interrupt this podcast for just one quick second because a lot of people wonder, Mickey, what is it that you even do besides host a podcast? Well, I do marketing, and really the biggest thing that I do is help you drive more traffic to your business. And not even just more traffic, but consistent traffic to your business. As a former shop owner, I know how important that is. So if that's something you're interested in, or you just want to talk about marketing or developing your business in general, feel free to reach out. You can visit collisioncentermarketing.com. There's a calendar on there, and you can just book a time that works for you, and we'll set up a phone call. Or you can email or call me, and my notes are down in the description of this episode. But I hope to hear from you. I'd love to help you build your business. But in the meantime, you better get back to this podcast because it's really good. So I think word of mouth is very powerful also when trying to get people on board. And that does go back to culture and what you're doing for your people. And I always tell the story, back in the day, I worked for a company called Valley Motor Center, and we were like beating people off with bats. Yeah.
You worked for Marsh.
With Marsh, yes.
Yep.
And he was an excellent businessman, but he was like a father figure to all of us. And everybody that knew because we talked to, you talk to your friends, you talk to your family, and we all loved our jobs. We got paid very well. He took care of us on holidays. Like, he went the extra mile. Bonus plans that he put in place. He was, any complaints that we had were addressed. I mean, we really felt like we were part of the family, not just part of the team. Like, we were part of the family, and he cared for us, got personal.
The family.
Yeah, the
part of the family,
Yes. I mean, if our kid was sick, it was like they were calling, how is everything going? One of the girls had their kids in for surgery, and we sent flour. It was like, and because I truly believe that because of that, the amount of people that applied to come work there without having, and we did advertise, when we had jobs opening or whatever, but there were always people on deck that were like, let us know when you need an estimator, we want to come work at Valley Motor Center, because like that was the place to be. You know what I mean?
And that's a beautiful thing. When you got your employees that want to tell people they meet out in the world in their day-to-day life about how awesome the places that they work at,
right?
Or your customers, you're fixing people's cars every day. How many customers walk into your shop and are like, wow, I'm really impressed by this place. Maybe I want to work here.
Right. Yes.
Putting a flyer at your front desk of what positions you're looking for, or just a recruiting card so someone can apply if they want to.
Right.
And I recommend getting, there's technology is such a beautiful thing nowadays that can really help us with a lot of things be organized. So like we subscribe to a company called Paycor that can put every single applicant that's ever applied is in there. And we can put notes on that person that applied. And so if someone applied 2 years later, I'll know they applied with me 2 years ago, and maybe I declined them because of XYZ.
Right.
Instead of just trusting, but to be able to have that information, you can categorize people by job. So it's like, hey, if I do need that, fine, and I need to hire someone now, I can go through that.
Right.
And I did it the old school way. When anytime I ever met anybody in the industry, I would save their name, what they did, and where they live in my phone.
Yeah.
And there are people that I interviewed years ago that lived too far away from the shops I had, but I now have a shop near them. And so I'll go through and everyone that's in that market, I'll call those people years later. Hey, you wanted a position, but you were too far away.
Right.
Well, I got a spot now, and I've gotten people that way.
Wow. That's a great idea. That's a really good idea. Now, part of what allows you guys to grow is your insurance relationships, because I know that you have very close insurance relationships. And that's not always the case for shops out there. They don't have those relationships with insurance companies. Some don't want them. And everybody has their right to do business the way they want to.
Of course.
When it comes to scaling, that obviously is really helpful for you guys. When it comes to shops that potentially don't have that, what would you recommend if they were looking to grow? What would be something that you would say like, okay, first we want to look at this, then we want to look at this. What is kind of your criteria?
Yeah, so I would do your research first. So if there's an area we want to look at, everyone's got a paint manufacturer they buy paint from to paint cars. Right. So those paint manufacturers, they have some added value services they may be able to help you with, where they can pull data for you of a population demographic information based off of straight from like an address. So if there's an address I'm looking at or a building that's available, they'll pull that report for me. What's the population from a 3-mile radius, 5-mile radius? I can get an idea how much business is in that market. And then, take a map of the area and go online, do some Google search and, plot out every single shop that's in the market and kind of know, okay, is there way too many shops for this amount of business in the area?
Right.
Or not. And maybe go, okay, there's plenty of business in this market and there's opportunity for another shop to come in here easily.
Right. Yeah.
And if you're going to grow, you have to have your own niche. You got to know what's going to make a customer want to come to you and how are you going to get them to know about you?
Right. Well, and the differentiator. And so, and that's always the tricky part. Whenever I ask shops, like sometimes I'll speak to groups and I always say, I want you guys to think about what differentiates you. And it can't be something that everybody else says. And then they're like, oh. So it can't be good customer service because everybody's going to say that they have good customer service or great customers, so like, well, then wait a minute. What is that? What does that look like? And the shops that really, really kind of step to that next level are the ones that more clearly have defined what it is that they do differently. What would you say, like for you guys, what do you feel like is your differentiator?
Yeah. So for us, it would be, we do work with insurance companies. The majority of our business all comes from insurance referrals. So with that said, being that I am in the realm of a lot more shops and growing, they're my customer too. Just like the owner of the vehicle is my customer, and so is the insurance company. And how can I give value-added service to both parties? How can I work on making sure that I'm doing a great quality job with great service in all my stores and that it's consistent across stores as much as possible?
Right.
And insurance companies are looking for you to self-manage yourself. They want that you can give them consistent service across the board and that you handle it on your own. Just like when you go into one In-N-Out burger in California, for all you Californians,
yes.
you know, the other In-N-Out burger tastes just as good.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly right. And we do love it for that.
Yeah.
Well, one thing was crazy that I had in my notes that during COVID, you guys actually doubled. So while the rest of the world was shutting down, so something that really differentiates you in my mind was like, okay, obviously their mindset is different because when everybody was backing off, there were only like a handful that pushed forward. And you guys were clearly one of them. I mean, I have in my notes here, you acquired 15 locations in 2019. Is that correct? Did I write that correctly?
No. So we had 15 locations in 2019. And then now we have 32 locations. So we've opened 17 since COVID started.
But you did ramp up during COVID.
Big time. Yeah. Yes. So like we used to only do 1 or 2 shops a year, and we did about 7 to 8 shops a year during COVID. And my dad always would tell us, you never buy your boats in summer, always buy your boats in winter. And he'd always talk about whenever you want to buy something, you buy in a downturn market, right? You don't buy stocks high, you want to buy the stocks low.
Yes.
And so, when a lot of people were wanting to sell their shops at that time, again, going back to always be fishing, we've always been talking with body shop owners about wanting, if they ever want to sell to us, and keeping those relationships with them and planting those seeds ahead of time. So there was plenty of shops that my brother talked to for years and built relationships and goes out to lunch with them every 6 months and knows them personally. And when COVID hit, a lot of people decided, hey, I want out. That because most body shop owners, they're getting towards retirement age, and people just didn't want to deal with it, and they just called Sean and said, I want to sell to you. I don't want to sell to these big consolidators. I want that personal relationship. I want to know who my employees are going to work for.
Yes. And that's so important. I mean, as a shop owner myself, when I was looking to sell my business, it was important. Where are my people going to go? Like, these are my people. I'm not just going to show them off to somebody else because I'm selling. And then they're going to be mistreated because, you really do feel like they're part of your family. They've sacrificed for you and your business. It's very emotional.
And we also try to make every single purchase as smooth, simple, and easy as possible for that person, because it is a very stressful moment for them to sell their life's work to, and they've never probably experienced that in their life. And so what I've heard a lot of feedback is that, some people can make it very convoluted and drag it out for a long time. And I've actually received other people calling us saying, hey, my friend owned this shop that you purchased and they loved the experience they had with you. And they said, if I was going to sell to anybody, I should sell to you. So now I'm calling you.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. That's really cool. Well, I do really think mindset is really at the core of this for you guys and your growth. And it takes me back to something that I wrote down and circled in my notes here as you're talking, fear hiring. It's like the fear word, like a lot of people are operating their business out of fear, where you guys are being very strategic and seeing opportunities versus like the fear of things. So you're preparing and being ready ahead of time. You're scouting locations ahead of time, people, shops, all of that kind of thing. Versus, you wouldn't have done what you did during COVID if you were operating out of fear. You wouldn't be, you ideally aren't hiring out of fear. And I feel like that's what a lot of shops are doing, where they're being reactive versus proactive. And it seems like for you guys, that's a really big piece that continues to propel you forward, is that proactive piece.
It's funny you say that, because that right there says prior planning and preparation prevents piss poor performance. The 7 Ps.
I love it.
And
I love that. How accurate.
Yeah.
Say it again, just in case they didn't hear it.
Prior planning and preparation prevents piss poor performance.
Yes.
The 7 Ps.
Yeah, the 7 Ps. Yeah, and you are an example of that, right? And when
And actually,
we
one more P, people, right? You had people in there too.
yes,
If you had the right people. Yeah.
that's
So let's make
right.
it 8 Ps.
Yeah, that's right. Patrick's created his own new quote. Yeah, I love it. Well, one thing I do want to touch on, I know we don't have a ton of time on that that final eighth P, people, and going back to the Marsh thing is really making your people feel part of all of it. And we talked
100%.
about, Patrick and I spent some time talking prior to him coming on the podcast, and you guys have different incentive programs for your people. And I think this is a miss for a lot of shops that could really be helpful. Can you share with us some of the ways that you guys are incentivizing or what you're doing to create that buy-in beyond the training and bring? You guys do a lot, but can you speak on those specifically?
Yeah. So I'm a real firm believer of Maslow's law, the hierarchy of needs that people need. And I recommend that the baseline needs that an employee needs is to be able to pay their bills, to be able to earn income, food, water, shelter. And I think sometimes business owners just scrape across that surface and they go, oh, well, I pay you to do a job, do your job.
Right.
And these are people we're dealing with, and you want them to believe in what you're doing and want to help you go where you're going and what you're trying to achieve. People need to know that they're loved and appreciated and that they're valuable and that they're part of something, like you were saying, working for Marsh. And we incentivize people that you get to create your own career path. We are going to be growing this company exponentially, and it's your choice on where you want to go with it. And so all of our people, everyone is on an incentive program. No one's just straight hourly in our company.
Okay.
Everyone has a bonus plan, a bonus structure to perform.
Awesome.
Managers, writers, technicians, everybody. So I want people to write their own check, because the way it's structured is the more money you make, the more money I make. We all win.
Right.
I want you to chase your dreams. I mean, inflation's going up. It's gone up a lot. And I want people to be able to retire someday.
Yeah.
And you've got to see what are some other important things to people. Benefits. We pay 100% of benefits for our employee. Health, dental, vision, we pay 100% of it. We even give them a debit card, a wellness card, where they get $2,000 a year loaded on that. That covers any copays or medications that they may have.
Cool.
401k plan with 401k matching. Reason why we pay 100% of benefits is traditional plans, maybe the employee has to pay 10, 15, 20%. But studies show if people have to pay any percent of benefits, they probably won't take the benefits. And I'm a firm believer, if I'm not looking out for my people's income, I'm not looking out for their health, and them being able to retire someday, I'm not being a good employer.
Right. Yeah. I really, really like that. And at the end of the day, I mean, for you guys having so many locations, I'm sure the cost adds up. It's not just for one store, we're going to do this.
Cheap.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not just like, we'll just go ahead and do that. But it's an investment, right? If you choose to, it's how you perspective. How do you choose to look at it? If you're looking at that as an expense line item, like, oh my gosh, versus the investment into your team, into your people, now it's a different perspective shift on that.
If you want top tier people, you've got to give top tier opportunities, income levels, benefits, everything. You know, never be cheap with your people.
Right. Well, and you guys, was it you that mentioned to me like ghost stocks in the business?
Yes. Yeah. So I was told about a thing that you can do with if you're looking to, let's say, open another location and you want to get someone to help grow your business with you. A buddy of mine at his shop, what he did was he can go get what's called phantom stocks, and you can give phantom shares, where you basically get a lawyer evaluates the valuation of your company. You just basically say what the valuation is, and you can give that person phantom shares of your company, where they can, if you're looking for a right-hand person that you are worried that they'll grow the company with you and maybe want to go open their own shop. You want to keep them vested in your business.
Right.
You can do that. And where they don't actually own part of the business, but there's something in writing that shows that if they were ever to retire after 55, or if you were to ever sell your business or something like that, that they have like an evaluation there where they can get a big payday when they retire, or if you ever sold your company. And so that is something that friend of mine does. And he says it works great to have people vested to want to help grow the company.
Right.
Because they're growing their future wealth too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. And I like what you said too about people create their own pay with the different bonus programs and things. And Marsh was more in line with all of that as well. We always had different bonus programs, incentive programs. And I see some businesses really gamify it really well and they have fun with it. And that's an option as well for people looking to create different bonus programs, especially when you have so many locations. I mean, you guys could do different location battles, where, in sales or whatever you guys want to do and have fun with it. And it's a way for people to play along to really their benefit. So I think there's a lot of ways to gamify some of that to make it fun
100%.
Versus like, oh my gosh, if I don't hit this bonus and I'm not going to make this money and I really need this money, because the bonus programs can also turn the other way and kind of be stressful. Like, well, if I don't get that, because I had been getting it for 6 months, but now if I'm not going to get it now, it puts me in a lurch. So that can be tricky. So I like the shops that find a way to gamify it to some degree.
100%. Yeah. I think everyone needs to know what the goals are, what they're part of. What they do helps achieve that goal. Every single job is important, whether it's a detailer, or the parts kid. If they don't do their job, it affects everyone else's livelihood. And so everyone needs to know how important their job is to achieving it. Yes. And if you do set bonus programs, I recommend there should be a baseline income that is a good solid income where that person can basically live off of that.
Right.
Without having the fear, if I don't hit this bonus, then I'm going to not be able to pay my bills this week.
Yes.
And then the bonus structure should be, don't set a bonus unless you're going to set a bonus that if someone just does their job, they can hit it. It shouldn't be some lofty goal that they've got to achieve.
Right.
It's got to be fair and reasonable. This is what I want us to achieve, but this is where I'm going to bonus you at. So where it's like, and show them the data. Transparency equals trust, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like we sent a report out to the whole company where everyone gets to see how every store performed. Every rider gets to see how they performed against all other 80-something riders in the company. And they can see, okay, here's the bonus line for these metrics. And all of these people are hitting it and I'm not hitting it. I don't have to say that person's not doing a good job. That person's going to look and go, whoa, there's 70 other people doing better than me. I need to do a better job.
Right. It's accountability. Right? You're not trying to bash 100%. Anybody. It's personal accountability.
Yep.
Yeah. That's cool. I feel like you've said some really good things today. I've got a whole sheet of notes as you're talking because it helps me to create the outline for the show and everything.
Yeah.
And you've hit on some really great topics today that I think shops of any size can grab some nuggets that will be really helpful for them. Seriously. I mean, I know you're like a fount of information over there and we could talk about all kinds of different things. We were like, so what should we talk about today? Well, this. So maybe we'll have you back on to talk about some other things. But everything that we talked about is so applicable for everybody listening. For everybody, really. It's really body shop business in general. I mean, really business in general. People are people no matter what industry you're in. We just tailor it for the collision industry, right?
Yep. Yep.
Patrick, is there anything that you feel like you wanted to share that you feel like is on your heart that you're like, you know what, before I get off this call, I just got to say this. Not that I'm going to put you on the spot or anything.
I mean, if I was going to give anyone advice out there in this business, and if it's going to be okay. Too often, we all live in fear of the what ifs in life. And studies I've read that 90% of things that we think of and fear and are afraid of never actually happen.
Right.
And so believe in yourself, make a smart, calculated, educated decision on doing something and give it your all. And sometimes you won't see instant gratification, but usually like the tortoise and the hare, if you just be that tortoise and just keep going at your goals, someday you're going to look back and go, wow, look what I've done so far.
Yeah. Yeah. I bet you feel like that sometimes, huh? And you're like,
yeah,
oh my gosh.
It's crazy. I never thought we'd be this big. I was like, holy smokes, like this is crazy. Now I'm having to learn and grow more and how to run a big company. And
right.
It's a wild ride, but it's crazy just to look back at 2019. I had 15 shops.
Right.
And now it's like, whoa, I doubled that in just a few years. It's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah. I believe that wholeheartedly. That's how I operate in life. Because oftentimes when we look too far out ahead, it's too overwhelming. And we find that then it's like, an analysis paralysis, or there's too much, there's so many unknowns. And where do I begin versus create an idea?
Take a step.
One foot in front of the other.
It was a 1,000-mile journey. Starts at the step.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you, Patrick, for coming on, sharing us with your 8 Ps. If you guys aren't following Patrick, go on LinkedIn. He posts some really good stuff on there. You can join in and celebrate his wins with them as they continue to grow. He shares some cool information on there. You can kind of peek in and see what he's doing. If they have questions, Patrick, are you open to them messaging you?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
Cool. So I'll put Patrick.
We all need people to talk to and bounce things off of.
Yeah, totally. Well, and that's one thing we didn't talk about today is being part of groups. I know you are involved in like 20 groups and that kind of thing, and a firm believer in all of that. And we don't have time today to get into all of that. But if nothing else, I'll have Patrick's email in the description. So if you guys have questions, this is something you're thinking about doing, maybe you have some ideas but aren't quite sure what to do. Patrick's such a cool guy, obviously, and they've really got a lot of stuff figured out, I'm sure. Nothing's perfect, but at any time we can bounce stuff off of other people, it's like so helpful because you're not in this alone. I know as a former shop owner, I felt alone a lot. And being part of a group, having people to talk to that can mentor you or that you can mentor, gosh, what a difference. What a difference that can make.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Your old boss, Marsh, was the person that voted us into Coyote Vision Group.
Oh, I love it.
Yep.
God bless his soul. I miss that man. Such a good dude. Such a good dude. Well, thanks again, Patrick, for coming on. Thank you for listening or watching, if you're on YouTube, today's episode of the Body Bangin' Podcast. Make sure that you're subscribed so you get alerted when the next one drops, because this one was good and the next one will be too. So we will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed today's show, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We have some incredible topics and guests coming your way you will not want to miss. If you are watching on YouTube and don't want to miss the latest and greatest, you'll want to hit the bell after subscribing, so you will get a pop-up each time a video podcast goes live. To our devoted fans, would you mind paying it forward and sharing this little gem with someone else you think may benefit from it? Much love from all of us here at Body Bangin', all things auto body.